I stared at the laptop screen, my heart suddenly racing. The email was right there, addressed to my husband Jeff. An exclusive invitation to the prestigious Paris International Fashion Gala. I smiled, thinking he was planning a surprise for our 5th anniversary next month. Then I scrolled down and read the line that shattered everything. Looking forward to seeing you and Amanda in Paris. Amanda, his college girlfriend, the one he dated for 4 years before me. My husband was taking his ex to Paris instead of me. It's just a business thing, Paula, Jeff said, not quite meeting my eyes when I casually mentioned the Paris event the next morning. Amanda works for the hosting company. They're a potential client for our firm. I nodded, pretending to accept his explanation. But something in his voice didn't sound right. Jeff and I had built our life together on honesty and trust. At 32, I thought I knew what a solid marriage looked like. Now, doubt crept in like a slow poison. When exactly is this event? I asked, keeping my tone light as I poured coffee. 2 weeks from now. Just a quick trip. 3 days maximum. He kissed my cheek and grabbed his briefcase. I've got to run. Big meeting today. After he left, I sat alone at our kitchen island, replaying our conversation. The way he rushed his words, the lack of eye contact, the quick exit, all red flags I couldn't ignore. Over the next few days, I noticed changes in Jeff's behavior. Subtle at first, then increasingly obvious. He bought new, expensive clothes without mentioning them. His phone was suddenly password protected. He started taking calls in another room, his voice lowered to a whisper. Late meeting tonight became his new mantra. I started keeping track. 3 times last week, twice already this week. My friend Stacy urged caution when I confided in her. Maybe it really is just business, she said over lunch. You don't want to accuse him of something without proof. She was right. 5 years of marriage deserve the benefit of doubt. But doubt was becoming harder to silence, especially after I found the credit card statement showing charges at Marcello's, an intimate Italian restaurant downtown. On nights Jeff claimed to be working late. I tried to rationalize it. Perhaps he was entertaining clients. That would explain the expensive wine charges. But why lie about it? I decided to give him space to see if he would come clean on his own. I maintained our normal routines, made his favorite dinners, asked about his day, all while a knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. Then came the text message that confirmed my worst fears. Jeff had gone for a shower, leaving his phone on the coffee table. It buzzed with an incoming message, and I glanced over automatically. The preview showed enough. Can't wait for our romantic getaway in Paris. Just like old times. Love, A. My hands trembled as I set the phone down. There it was. Not a business trip. A romantic getaway with Amanda. I managed to compose myself before Jeff returned, but inside, my world was collapsing. That night, I lay awake beside him, wondering how we'd reached this point. When had I become insufficient? What did Amanda offer that I couldn't provide? The next day, I called in sick to work and did something I'd never done before. I investigated my husband. Online searches revealed the Paris International Fashion Gala was indeed a prestigious event, but not primarily a business function. It was an exclusive social gathering of fashion industry elites, designers, and wealthy patrons. The kind of event couples attended together. The kind of event I should have been attending with my husband. I dug deeper and found the original invitation in our shared email account's trash folder. It was addressed to both of us. Mr. and Mrs. Jeffrey Barrett are cordially invited. My name had been there all along. This wasn't just Jeff choosing Amanda over me. This was Jeff deliberately removing me from an event we had both been invited to attend. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. We'd built a life based on shared dreams. I'd supported his career in luxury fashion marketing, celebrating every promotion, understanding every late night. Now I questioned everything about our relationship. For the next few days, I maintained a painful charade. I smiled at Jeff over breakfast, kissed him goodbye as he left for work, and pretended I didn't know he was systematically betraying me. Each moment felt like walking on broken glass, but I needed more information before confronting him. I became a detective in my own marriage. The Paris event's website revealed it was a 3-day celebration of fashion, culminating in a formal gala that required couple attendance. Not a business function at all, but a glamorous social affair where industry connections were made between champagne toasts and designer showcases. I found myself scrolling through social media, searching for Amanda. I hadn't thought about her in years. She and Jeff had dated through college, breaking up a year before I met him. He'd always described their relationship as intense, but ultimately incompatible. Her profile was easy to find. Amanda Wilson, now Amanda Thompson. Married to Brian Thompson, a successful architect whose firm specialized in sustainable luxury buildings. They lived in Boston, just 2 hours from our home in Connecticut. Their photos showed a picture-perfect couple attending galas and charity events, all gleaming smiles and elegant attire. Had they reconnected at some industry function? Had they been in touch all along? The questions tormented me. I carefully checked our phone records. Calls to a Boston area code began appearing 6 months ago. Short at first, then longer, more frequent. The most recent lasted 73 minutes, made while I was visiting my mother in Rhode Island. Our shared calendar showed business trips that suddenly made sense in a new, devastating context. Chicago client meeting coincided with a sustainable architecture conference in Chicago, where Brian Thompson had been a featured speaker, according to his firm's website. Had Jeff been meeting Amanda while her husband was occupied with professional obligations? The deeper I dug, the more my stomach knotted. This wasn't a recent development or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was calculated deception spanning months. I debated confronting Jeff immediately, but held back. The Paris event was less than 10 days away. I needed irrefutable evidence before facing him. My opportunity came unexpectedly when Jeff mentioned a dinner meeting with an important client downtown. "Might be late," he said casually. "Don't wait up." "No problem," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. "I have some work to catch up on anyway." As soon as he left, I called a rideshare service. 20 minutes later, I was parked across the street from his office building, watching. Jeff emerged at 6:15, but instead of heading to any restaurant in the business district, he walked 3 blocks and entered the Hotel Belmont, an upscale boutique hotel known for its discretion and luxury. I waited 30 minutes before following. The hotel lobby was elegant and subdued. I found a seat with a view of both the entrance and the intimate hotel bar. I ordered a sparkling water and pretended to read something on my phone. At 7:20, I spotted them. Jeff and Amanda sat in a corner booth, leaning toward each other, their fingers intertwined on the table. She laughed at something he said, tossing her perfectly highlighted hair over one shoulder. He looked at her with an intensity I once believed was reserved for me. I watched them for an excruciating hour, nursing my drink and fighting back tears. They never saw me. When they finally stood to leave, Jeff placed his hand on the small of her back in a gesture of intimate familiarity. At the hotel entrance, they kissed. Not a friendly goodbye between old acquaintances or business associates. A passionate embrace between lovers. I left before they could spot me, my chest so tight I could barely breathe. Back home, I moved through our house like a ghost, touching photographs of our wedding, our honeymoon, holidays spent with family. Had it all been a lie? I couldn't sleep. Instead, I logged into our joint accounts and discovered something that turned my pain to cold fury. Jeff had made hotel reservations in Paris. Not the standard room that would be covered by his company, but a luxury suite at Le Grand Paris, complete with champagne service and couples spa treatments. The reservation notes, visible in our shared email, specified for Amanda with love. The last shred of doubt vanished. My husband wasn't just taking his ex-girlfriend to Paris. He was planning a romantic getaway using our joint funds, in a trip I had been specifically invited to attend with him. That night, as Jeff slept soundly beside me, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront him yet. I wouldn't cry or beg or demand explanations. Instead, I would take action. Strategic, deliberate action. The next morning, I looked up Brian Thompson's architectural firm and placed a call. Meeting Brian Thompson felt surreal. We agreed to meet at a quiet coffee shop halfway between Boston and Connecticut, a neutral location where neither Jeff nor Amanda would likely encounter us. I arrived early, choosing a corner table that offered privacy. My stomach churned with anxiety as I waited. Was I doing the right thing? What if Brian didn't believe me? What if he already knew and didn't care? I recognized him immediately from his firm's website photos. Tall with dark hair and serious eyes, dressed in a tailored navy suit that spoke of success but not flashiness. He spotted me and walked over, his expression guarded. "Paula Barrett?" He extended his hand. "Yes. Thank you for coming, Mr. Thompson." "Brian, please." He sat down across from me, declining when I offered to get him coffee. "I'd prefer if you'd explain why you contacted me. Your message was quite vague." I'd rehearsed this conversation countless times, but now that the moment had arrived, my carefully prepared words abandoned me. "I believe our spouses are having an affair," I said bluntly. His expression didn't change, but I noticed his hands tighten around the empty mug in front of him. "That's a serious accusation." "I know. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't certain." I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos I'd taken at the Hotel Belmont, the text message previews I'd screenshot, the hotel reservation in Paris. "These could be explained away," he said, but doubt had crept into his voice. "Amanda and I have been married 7 years. She wouldn't." "I thought the same about Jeff," I said softly. "We've been married 5 years. I never imagined he could lie to me so convincingly." Brian stared out the window for a long moment. "Amanda has been distant lately, working late, weekend trips to meet clients." His gaze returned to me, sharper now. "The Paris Fashion Gala. She mentioned attending for work, said she'd be representing clients." "It's not a business event," I explained. "It's a social function. Couples attend together. Jeff and I received the original invitation together, but he's taking Amanda instead. They've been planning it for weeks." Brian's professional composure cracked slightly. He ran a hand through his hair, revealing the wedding band he still wore faithfully. "We've been having problems," he admitted. "Communication issues," she says. "She suggested a trial separation last month, but I asked her to try counseling first." "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. His pain mirrored my own. "When is this Paris event?" "Next weekend. They leave on Thursday." Brian was silent for several minutes, processing. When he spoke again, his voice had a new resolve. "I have contacts in Paris. Architectural clients, including the firm that renovated the venue hosting this gala." I leaned forward. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not entirely sure yet." His expression was thoughtful. "But I believe we both deserve answers, don't you?" That first meeting lasted 3 hours. We shared our stories, our suspicions, the moments when we'd first sensed something was wrong. Brian described how Amanda had grown increasingly critical of their relationship, finding fault with everything from his work hours to the way he loaded the dishwasher. "Classic projection," I noted. "Jeff's been doing the same. Creating conflicts over nothing, then using them as excuses to storm out or stay at the office." "When did you first suspect?" Brian asked. "Only recently, when I found the email about Paris. But looking back, the signs were there for months." I hesitated, then asked the question that had been haunting me. "Do you think they never really got over each other? That all these years, through both our marriages, they've been carrying a torch?" Brian considered this. "Amanda never mentioned Jeff until about 8 months ago. She ran into him at a fashion industry event in New York. She mentioned it casually, said it was nice catching up with an old friend. I thought nothing of it. 8 months, I repeated. That matches when Jeff started having more business trips. As our conversation continued, an unexpected sense of connection formed between us. We were strangers united by betrayal, but I found myself appreciating Brian's thoughtfulness, his refusal to jump to conclusions without evidence, and his calm determination once that evidence became undeniable. I have an idea, he said, as we prepared to leave. My firm has an invitation to the Paris event. It's why I recognized the name when you mentioned it. We turned it down because Amanda said she would be traveling that weekend, supposedly for work. You think we could still use it? I can check. The invitation includes a +1. He held my gaze. We could both attend. The suggestion hung between us. Not for revenge exactly, but for truth, for closure. Let me think about it, I said. We exchanged phone numbers and agreed to talk again soon. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't expected, a spark of determination, replacing the hollow ache of betrayal. 2 days later, Brian called. The invitation is still valid, he said without preamble. My firm values the relationship with the event organizers. If I say I've changed my mind about attending, they'll be pleased. You're suggesting we go to Paris, to the same event? Yes. And do what, exactly? Create a scene? Embarrass them publicly? No, Brian said firmly. I'm suggesting we show up, calmly and with dignity, and simply make our presence known. What happens after that is up to them. I thought about Jeff's deception, the methodical way he'd excluded me from an event I was meant to attend, the money he'd spent on Amanda from our joint accounts. I thought about the years I'd supported his career, believed in him, loved him. I'll need to check flights, I said. Already done, Brian replied, surprising me. There are seats available on Thursday morning. We'd arrive Friday morning, with plenty of time before the evening event. His efficiency impressed me. You've really thought this through. I'm an architect, he said simply. Planning is what I do. That evening, when Jeff mentioned he'd be traveling for work the following week, I nodded and suggested I might visit my sister while he was gone. Great idea, he said, relief evident in his voice. He didn't even ask which sister, or where I'd be staying. The final confirmation came later that night. Brian texted, "Tickets secured, both event and flights." I replied, "I'm in." Over the next week, Brian and I met 3 more times to coordinate our plan. We chose a cafe in a small town between our homes, unlikely to be frequented by anyone who knew us. Each meeting strengthened our resolve and, unexpectedly, our connection. We need to be clear about our intentions, Brian said during our second meeting. This isn't about creating drama or causing a scene. Agreed, I nodded, stirring my coffee. This is about standing up for ourselves, showing them we know the truth and we won't be taken for fools. Exactly. His steady gaze held mine, dignity above all else. We discussed practical details, flights, hotel accommodations separate from where Jeff and Amanda would be staying, appropriate attire for the gala. Brian handled the logistics with impressive efficiency, while I focused on maintaining normalcy at home to avoid arousing Jeff's suspicion. That became increasingly difficult as Jeff grew more distant and irritable. He spent longer hours at work, came home distracted, and barely engaged in conversation. Twice, he started minor arguments over nothing, creating excuses to sleep in the guest room. I played along, pretending not to notice his overnight bag already packed and hidden in his office closet, or the new cologne I found in his bathroom drawer, a cologne I'd never smelled on him. "You're being incredibly strong," Brian commented during our third meeting, after I described maintaining my composure through Jeff's transparent deceptions. "What choice do I have?" I shrugged. "Fall apart? Beg him to stay? That's not who I am." "No," Brian agreed with the first genuine smile I'd seen from him. "I don't believe it is." As we finalized our plans, I learned more about Brian. Unlike Jeff's charismatic extroversion, Brian possessed a quiet, thoughtful intensity. He listened when I spoke, really listened, asking insightful questions and remembering details I mentioned in passing. His architectural firm specialized in sustainable luxury buildings, reflecting his belief that beauty and responsibility could coexist. Amanda always found my environmental concerns tedious, he admitted. She prefers flash over substance. I understood immediately why she'd been drawn back to Jeff. My husband excelled at surface charm, at creating impressions rather than lasting impact. The day before our departure, I met Brian at an upscale men's store to help him select appropriate attire for the gala. The Paris event had a specific dress code, information I had from the original invitation. Navy or charcoal? He asked, holding up 2 suits. Charcoal, I decided. With that burgundy tie, it's unexpected but elegant. As the salesperson tailored the suit for expedited alterations, Brian turned to me. Are you having second thoughts? I considered the question seriously. Not about going, but I keep wondering if confronting them is the right approach. Will it change anything? Will it matter? It will matter to us, he said simply. Whatever they've done, however this ends, we deserve the truth. We deserve to face it standing, not lying to ourselves. His words resonated deeply. For days I'd been functioning on determination and adrenaline, pushing aside deeper questions about what would happen after Paris. Now they surfaced with uncomfortable clarity. What if Jeff begs forgiveness? I asked quietly. What if he claims it was a mistake, swears it won't happen again? Brian studied me carefully. Could you believe him? After discovering months of deliberate deception? I thought about the hotel reservations, the planned romantic dinners, the calculated way Jeff had excluded me from an event we were both invited to attend. No, I admitted. The trust is gone. I'm not sure it can be rebuilt. Then you already have your answer. That evening, I discovered something that hardened my resolve completely. While organizing some paperwork, I found bank statements showing Jeff had transferred $15,000 from our joint savings account to a personal account I didn't know existed. The transfer had happened just 2 days earlier, clearly intended to fund his lavish Paris getaway with Amanda. The discovery transformed my lingering sadness into cold determination. This wasn't just emotional betrayal, it was financial as well. Jeff was using our shared resources, built from both our incomes and sacrifices, to romance another woman. I photographed the bank statements and sent them to Brian. His response was immediate. This changes things. He's not just betraying your trust, he's stealing from your future. I know, I texted back. No more doubts. Paris, here we come. The next morning, I kissed Jeff goodbye with Oscar-worthy performance, wishing him a productive business trip, and telling him I'd be leaving later to visit my sister in Boston. He barely registered my words, clearly preoccupied with his own anticipation. 2 hours later, I met Brian at the airport. A small carry-on containing my carefully selected gala attire and essential documents. Seeing him waiting at our designated meeting point, his expression a mixture of determination and suppressed pain that surely mirrored my own, I felt a surprising sense of partnership. Ready? He asked simply. As I'll ever be, I replied, and we boarded our flight to Paris. The flight to Paris was long but surprisingly comfortable. Brian had secured us business class seats, explaining that his firm always flew employees this way for international travel. I insist on paying my share, I told him as we settled into our seats. We'll figure it out later, he said. But I made a mental note to reimburse him regardless. Financial independence felt suddenly crucial to my sense of self-respect. We spent most of the flight discussing our approach to the confrontation. No public scene, we agreed. A calm, dignified appearance at the event, followed by a private conversation if possible. We rehearsed potential scenarios, preparing responses to likely reactions. Jeff will be defensive, I predicted. He'll try to turn it around, make it seem like I'm overreacting or misunderstanding. Brian nodded. Amanda will likely deny everything at first, then blame external circumstances, work stress, feeling neglected, temporary insanity. Our shared insights into our spouse's probable tactics strengthened my conviction that we were doing the right thing. Still, as the plane began its descent into Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport, anxiety tightened my chest. Having second thoughts? Brian asked quietly, noticing my tension. Not exactly. Just wondering if this will bring the closure I'm hoping for. If not closure, then at least truth, he replied. And truth is where healing begins. Paris greeted us with unexpectedly beautiful spring weather. Sunlight glinted off the Seine as our taxi transported us from the airport to our hotel, a modest but charming establishment in the 7th arrondissement, deliberately chosen to be far from Le Grand Paris, where Jeff and Amanda would be staying. After checking in and freshening up, Brian suggested we take a walk to combat jet lag. The gala isn't until tomorrow evening. We should try to adjust to the time difference. We strolled along the Seine, past iconic landmarks that would normally have inspired awe and excitement. Under different circumstances, I would have been thrilled to experience Paris for the first time. Now, the city's famous romantic ambiance seemed a cruel irony. Have you been to Paris before? I asked Brian as we paused on a bridge, watching tourist boats glide beneath us. Twice for work, once with Amanda. A shadow crossed his face. Our first anniversary. She wanted to come for Fashion Week. Was it special? I thought so at the time. He gazed out at the water. Looking back, she spent most of the trip at fashion shows and networking events. I saw more of Paris on my business trips. I touched his arm lightly in a gesture of understanding. Jeff and I always talked about coming here together. I never imagined this would be how it happened. Brian covered my hand with his briefly. Not exactly the Paris experience either of us envisioned. We continued walking, eventually finding a small cafe where we ordered coffee and pastries. The simple pleasure of sitting in a Parisian cafe, watching the world go by, provided unexpected moments of peace amidst our emotional turmoil. Tell me something I don't know about you, Brian said suddenly. Something unrelated to all this. The question caught me off guard. I collect vintage perfume bottles, I offered after a moment. Not expensive ones, just interesting shapes and colors. I have about 30 of them on my dresser at home. He smiled. I can picture that. Elegant, but unpretentious. Your turn, I prompted. I play the piano, classical mostly. It helps me think through architectural problems. That's beautiful, I said, genuinely impressed. I'd like to hear you play someday. The words hung between us, laden with implications about a future beyond our current mission. We both looked away, suddenly conscious of boundaries neither of us was ready to cross. As evening approached, we returned to our hotel and discussed final preparations for the following day. Brian had confirmed our invitations were in order. I had researched the gala schedule and venue layout. We should arrive about 30 minutes after the event begins, I suggested. That gives them time to get comfortable, to believe they've gotten away with it. Brian agreed. Their shock will be more genuine if they're already relaxed and off guard. We ordered room service for dinner, neither of us feeling up to a restaurant experience. As we ate, Brian received an email confirmation from the venue, acknowledging his attendance with a +1. It's real, he said quietly. Until this moment, part of me hoped we were wrong, that there was some explanation. I know. I pushed my barely touched food aside. Even with all the evidence, there's that tiny voice, hoping for an innocent explanation. Brian set down his fork and looked directly at me. Paula, whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know I admire your courage. Many people would have confronted Jeff immediately or simply fallen apart. You've shown remarkable strength. His words touched me deeply. The same goes for you. This can't be easy. It's not, he admitted. But having someone who truly understands helps more than I expected. Later that evening, as we finalized our plans, Brian suggested we do a walkthrough of the venue before the event. My contact at the renovation firm offered to show us around tomorrow morning. It might help to be familiar with the space. Good idea. I welcomed any advantage we could gain. The next morning, we visited the magnificent historic building that would host the gala. Brian's professional connection gave us access to the space while it was being transformed for the evening's festivities. Seeing the ornate ballroom with its crystal chandeliers and gilded moldings, I imagined Jeff and Amanda there, celebrating their deception beneath all that splendor. The thought strengthened my resolve. After the venue visit, we returned to our hotel to rest before the evening. The gala would begin at 8 o'clock. Our plan was to arrive at 8:30, make our entrance, and then see how events unfolded. Brian knocked on my door at 4, suggesting an early dinner. We might not have much appetite later, he reasoned. We found a quiet restaurant nearby, but conversation was difficult. The approaching confrontation weighed heavily on both of us. We were finishing our meal when Brian's phone chimed with a message. His expression changed as he read it. My contact at the venue texted. He saw Amanda's name on the guest list and mentioned, I might want to know she's already checked in with her companion. They're there already? The event doesn't start for hours. Apparently, they're staying at the hotel connected to the venue. They checked into room 422 about an hour ago. A cold realization struck me. Brian, our hotel is just 2 blocks from the venue. We could go now, confront them privately instead of at the event. He considered this. It would be less public, more controlled. Let's do it, I decided. I don't want to wait any longer. We paid our bill and walked the short distance to the venue hotel. Brian's connection had given him access information that allowed us to navigate the building confidently. We took the elevator to the 4th floor and found room 422 at the end of a plush corridor. As we approached, we heard voices through the partially open door. Jeff's voice, saying something about finally being together openly. Then Amanda's response. Once we're back from Paris, we'll tell them everything. Start fresh in New York, just like we planned. Brian and I froze, exchanging shocked glances. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning to leave us and start a new life together. The revelation should have crushed me. Instead, it cemented my determination. Whatever happened next, I would face it with dignity intact and eyes wide open. The Paris Fashion Gala transformed the historic venue into a dreamscape of elegance and glamour. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over the ballroom, where fashion industry elites mingled in couture finery. Under different circumstances, I would have been awestruck by the grandeur. I wore a midnight blue gown I'd purchased months earlier for our anniversary, an irony not lost on me. Brian looked distinguished in his charcoal suit and burgundy tie, his expression composed despite the tension radiating from him. "Ready?" he asked quietly as we stood at the entrance. I took a deep breath. Ready. We entered arm in arm, presenting our invitation to the attendant who checked our names against the guest list. Mr. Brian Thompson and guest, he announced, loud enough to be heard by nearby guests. Heads turned as we made our way into the ballroom. I scanned the crowd, my heart pounding. Then I saw them. Jeff and Amanda stood near a champagne fountain, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. She wore a stunning red gown that probably cost more than my monthly salary. They were laughing, completely at ease in their betrayal. Brian spotted them at the same moment. His grip on my arm tightened slightly. "Steady," he murmured. "Remember our plan. Dignity above all." We made our way across the room, not directly toward them, but to a position where they would inevitably notice us. I accepted a glass of champagne from a passing server, needing something to hold on to. It took about 3 minutes. Jeff glanced in our direction casually, then did a dramatic double-take as recognition dawned. The color drained from his face. He gripped Amanda's arm, whispering urgently. She turned, her expression morphing from confusion to shock to panic in rapid succession. "They've seen us," Brian noted unnecessarily. Your husband looks like he's seen a ghost. Two ghosts, I corrected, meeting Jeff's stunned gaze across the room. Jeff recovered first, whispering something to Amanda before making his way toward us. She remained frozen in place, her champagne glass tilted dangerously. Paula, Jeff said as he reached us, his voice strained with forced casualness. What a surprise! I thought you were visiting your sister. Evidently, we both had plans we didn't share, I replied calmly. Hello, Jeff. You remember Brian Thompson? Amanda's husband? Jeff's facade cracked. He glanced around nervously, clearly concerned about creating a scene. Paula, this isn't the place. We should talk privately. Funny, I was about to suggest the same thing in your hotel room earlier, I said. But you seemed busy making plans to start a new life in New York. His eyes widened. You were outside our room? You were spying on me? Correcting your pronouns, Jeff. It's not your room. It's the room you booked with our joint savings account. $15,000 for a romantic getaway with another woman. By now, Amanda had approached, her expression shifting from shock to a calculated poise. Paula, Brian, this is certainly unexpected. I can explain everything. Brian regarded his wife coolly. I'm looking forward to hearing it. Perhaps you can start with why you're attending an event I was specifically told was a work obligation for you, with a man who is not your husband. Amanda's composure wavered. It's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like, I countered. You two reconnected 8 months ago and have been carrying on an affair ever since. Hotel meetings, weekend trips disguised as work obligations, and now Paris. A romantic getaway funded by our joint savings. Jeff's expression hardened. Paula, you're making a scene. People are starting to notice. He wasn't wrong. Nearby guests were casting curious glances our way, sensing the tension. I'm not the one who created this scene, Jeff. You did that when you decided to bring your ex-girlfriend to an event you and I were invited to attend as a couple. Amanda tried a different approach, her voice lowered to a hiss. This is completely inappropriate. We're all adults. If you had concerns, you should have addressed them privately. Like you addressed your concerns about your marriage privately with my husband? I asked. You don't understand, she insisted. Jeff and I have history. We reconnected at a time when both of us were feeling unsatisfied in our marriages. Brian's calm voice cut through her excuses. I suggested marriage counseling, Amanda. You said you needed space to think. Apparently that space included hotel rooms with Paula's husband. Jeff's professional mask finally cracked completely. This is ridiculous. We don't have to explain ourselves to you. Yes, Amanda and I reconnected. Yes, we realized we still have feelings for each other. These things happen. Stealing $15,000 happens. Lying for months happens. Planning to abandon your spouse and start a new life without even having the decency to be honest happens. My voice remained steady despite the anger burning through me. Before Jeff could respond, a commotion nearby drew our attention. A woman with striking platinum blonde hair approached our group, her expression thunderous. Amanda? What the hell is going on? James just showed me the texts on your phone. Amanda paled visibly. Natalie, this isn't what it looks like. The newcomer, Natalie, laughed bitterly. Really? Because it looks like you've been sleeping with my husband while apparently also sleeping with this man. She gestured toward Jeff. James found your messages. All of them. Brian and I exchanged shocked glances. Amanda wasn't just having an affair with Jeff. She was apparently involved with this woman's husband as well. Who's James? I asked, unable to help myself. My husband. Natalie spat. Apparently one of Amanda's many conquests. He's in our hotel room right now, devastated. We're supposed to be celebrating our anniversary this weekend. Jeff stared at Amanda, betrayal written across his features. What is she talking about? Who's James? Amanda's carefully constructed poise crumbled entirely. Jeff, I can explain. James is just a colleague. We had a brief thing, it didn't mean anything. A brief thing? Natalie countered. The messages go back 3 months. He took you to his family's cabin in Vermont last month, while I was caring for my mother after her surgery. The situation had spiraled beyond anything I could have anticipated. What I had thought was a single betrayal had layers I hadn't imagined. 3 months ago, Brian said thoughtfully. That would be when you told me you needed space to evaluate our marriage. Amanda looked trapped, her gaze darting between the three of us as if searching for an escape route. Jeff turned to me, desperation replacing his earlier defensiveness. Paula, we need to talk privately. This has gotten out of hand. I agree completely, I said calmly. This has gotten out of hand. But we won't be talking privately, Jeff. We'll be talking through my lawyer when I get back to Connecticut. Nearby guests were now openly watching our drama unfold, whispering behind their hands. A representative from the event approached discreetly. Is everything all right here? We'd be happy to provide a private room if you need to continue your discussion. That won't be necessary, I said firmly. My husband and I have said everything that needs to be said. I turned to Brian. I believe I've lost my appetite for champagne and fashion. Would you mind escorting me out? Brian offered his arm without hesitation. It would be my pleasure. As we turned to leave, Jeff called after me. Paula, don't do this. We can work this out. I paused and looked back at him. The man I had loved, trusted, built a life with. Now a stranger, revealed in harsh light. Goodbye, Jeff. We left them standing there, Jeff looking stunned, Amanda trapped in her web of lies, Natalie vibrating with righteous fury. As Brian and I walked away, I heard Natalie begin a blistering tirade that would ensure Amanda's humiliation was complete. Outside in the cool Parisian evening, I finally allowed myself to tremble. That was unexpected, Brian finished. I had no idea about this James person. Neither did Jeff, apparently. Despite everything, I felt a twinge of sympathy for my husband. He'd been deceiving me, yes, but it seemed he was being deceived as well. What now? Brian asked as we walked slowly away from the venue. Now we go home, I said firmly, and rebuild our lives without them. The journey back to Connecticut felt entirely different from the tense flight to Paris. Though physically exhausted, I experienced a strange sense of lightness, as if a burden had been lifted. Brian and I parted at the airport with a promise to stay in touch, both of us needing space to process everything that had happened. Jeff tried calling repeatedly during my first days back, his messages growing increasingly desperate. I didn't answer. Instead, I contacted a divorce attorney, recommended by a colleague, and began the process of untangling our shared life. He took money from your joint account? My attorney, Melissa, confirmed as she reviewed the documents I'd provided. That's going to work in our favor. What about the rest? The affair? The lies? Connecticut is a no-fault state, she explained. But financial misconduct is something judges consider when dividing assets. We'll make sure you're protected. 2 days after my return, Jeff showed up at our house, unshaven and desperate. Paula, please, just talk to me. There's nothing to say, I told him, maintaining a safe distance in the doorway. I've seen and heard enough. Amanda was playing us both, he insisted. I had no idea about the other man. And that makes it better? You were only cheating with one person instead of multiple people? He ran his hands through his disheveled hair. I made a terrible mistake. I got caught up in nostalgia, in what Amanda and I once had. But seeing her true colors in Paris, I realized what I was about to throw away. What we have is real, Paula. We can rebuild. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to imagine it. Reconciliation, counseling, slowly repairing trust. But then I remembered the hotel reservation notes. For Amanda, with love. The planned new life in New York. The $15,000, the months of lies. No, Jeff, we can't. You didn't make a mistake. You made hundreds of deliberate choices, day after day, to betray me, to lie to me. To steal from me. The money, he said quickly. I can explain about the money. I was going to pay it back. With what? Our joint tax refund. My bonus? I shook my head. It doesn't matter anymore. I've spoken with a lawyer. You'll be hearing from her. His desperation turned to anger. This is because of him, isn't it? Amanda's husband. I saw how you two looked at each other in Paris. Brian and I are both victims of your deception. Nothing more. I stepped back and began closing the door. Please don't come here again without arranging it through my attorney. The following weeks brought expected challenges, but also unexpected growth. Jeff's boss, who had connections in the fashion industry, learned about the Paris incident. The professional repercussions were significant. Jeff lost an important client who happened to be friends with Natalie's husband, James. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding. I returned to work at the marketing firm where I'd put my career on a slower track to support Jeff's ambitions. My boss, Linda, proved unexpectedly supportive when I explained my situation. I've been wondering when you'd step fully into your potential, she said. You've been hiding your light for too long. A month after Paris, I received news from my attorney that Jeff had agreed to return the $15,000 he'd taken from our joint account, plus an additional amount as part of our separation agreement. The divorce proceedings were moving forward without major complications. Brian and I stayed in touch, initially through text messages checking on each other's well-being, then occasional phone calls. 3 months after Paris, he mentioned he would be in Connecticut for a sustainable architecture conference. Would you be open to having dinner? He asked. Just as friends. I'd like to see how you're doing in person. We met at a quiet restaurant near my new apartment. The connection we'd formed in Paris had evolved into something gentle and supportive, free from the desperation that had initially brought us together. Amanda moved to Chicago, he mentioned as we shared a bottle of wine. Apparently she had yet another relationship developing there. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. He smiled. Don't be. It's been liberating, actually. Looking back, I can see how unhealthy our relationship had become. I was constantly trying to meet impossible standards, walking on eggshells to avoid criticism. I understood completely. Jeff and I settled the financial aspects of our divorce last week. It's almost finalized. How does that feel? Bittersweet, I admitted. 5 years is a significant chapter of life, but I don't regret ending it. No regrets about Paris? I considered the question carefully. None. It was painful but necessary. Without that moment of confrontation, I might have accepted half-truths and partial apologies. I might have tried to rebuild something that was fundamentally broken. Brian nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes, the kindest thing we can do for ourselves is accept when something is over. 6 months after the Paris incident, my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined. I'd received a promotion at work, taking on projects I was passionate about rather than just those that accommodated Jeff's career. I'd reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my marriage and strengthened bonds with my family, who provided unwavering support. I'd also learned valuable lessons about trust, not just in others but in myself. The woman who had flown to Paris fueled by hurt and betrayal had returned stronger, more self-aware, and determined to create a life defined by authenticity rather than appearances. Brian's architecture firm opened a branch office in Hartford, bringing him to Connecticut more frequently. Our friendship evolved naturally, built on mutual respect and understanding rather than shared trauma. We moved forward cautiously, both carrying lessons from our past relationships. I'd like to take you to dinner next weekend, he said during one of his visits. Not as friends supporting each other through divorce, just dinner. With someone I've come to admire tremendously. The invitation represented a potential new beginning, approached with eyes wide open. We both understood the value of honesty, the importance of clear boundaries, and the courage required to trust again after betrayal. 1 year after Paris, I stood in my new home, a charming cottage near the coast. The vintage perfume bottles I collected were arranged on my dresser, catching morning light. On the wall hung a framed architectural sketch Brian had created of the space, a thoughtful gift, reflecting how well he'd come to know me. Our relationship had developed slowly, deliberately, with transparent communication at its foundation. No grand romantic gestures, no whirlwind passion, just steady, authentic connection, growing stronger with time. The most profound lesson Paris taught me wasn't about betrayal, but about self-worth. About recognizing when to fight for a relationship and when to fight for yourself. About the strength that comes from facing painful truths rather than comfortable illusions. Jeff's betrayal could have left me bitter and mistrustful. Instead, it became the catalyst for creating a life more aligned with my true self. Sometimes the end of one story is necessary for another, better one to begin. The path forward isn't about forgetting the past, but about carrying its lessons with grace, about understanding that our value isn't diminished by someone else's failure to recognize it, and about the courage to believe that genuine connection is still possible, even after heartbreak. Have you ever faced a betrayal that ultimately led to unexpected growth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that beyond betrayal, there's renewal. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember, sometimes the most painful endings make way for the most beautiful beginnings.